Hi everyone and welcome back. In today's video I'm going to talk about how to create a custom structure for the dist directory in Webpack, which is the place where Webpack will yield all of the generated chunks which are the result of the bundling process. And today the problem we are facing is a pretty interesting one, I would say. But first we'll go over this problem. Then, before seeing the solution, we'll have to clarify some terms in which are very used in the Webpack's parlance. And after that, we'll see a solution along with some discussions about it. Alright, so this is the problem we are facing. We want to model the dist, the shape of the dist directory based on the entry object, and it all boils down to a simple rule. Whenever the entry path contains the overrides keyword, then whatever comes after that keyword must be rearranged in a hierarchy of directories, which all of them will have to reside in the dist directory, which will be chosen by us, as you can see here. I'm referring to the path property of the output object. Alright, so in this case we have one overrides keyword here and one here. The corresponding output file of this home.js file will be this one, which resides in the site2 directory, which itself will be part of the dist directory. And the same happens for this home.js file, which will be part of the site5 directory, which will be part of the dist directory. However, this isn't the case for this entry path, which doesn't contain the overrides keyword, so the corresponding file of this home.js file will simply be this one. I have to mention that the use case is a different one. It says that he has to serve multiple websites, but this isn't very important. Now we'll just focus on the problem. So this is the problem we are trying to solve. Now it's time to clarify some concepts. The first one is a chunk. What is a chunk? Well, you can think of a chunk as a group of modules, but these modules must be connected with each other. Before going any further, I will have to very quickly say what a module is. Well, a module is an upgraded version of a simple file, which is in the end a simple string. So it doesn't have much meaning to Webpack, but a module, we have the source code, we have the path name, we have the dependencies and many other things, which are again very helpful to Webpack. So for now, you can say that each file will have an associated module, but a module can import other modules as well, and those modules can import other modules too, and so on. Well, by following this logic, we can foresee that a tree of modules can be built. Well, this tree, all of the modules which are part of this tree of modules will be the modules which belong to a given chunk. Let's see a quick example of that. I have right here a home.js file which imports from the car.js. So until now we have two modules, and this car.js file imports from vehicle.js, and we should have at the end three modules which belong to a single chunk. Let's actually build a project. By the way, you can also see the chunk hash because this is the way I configured it. And as I've said, this is a chunk. which contains all the modules. It contains the car module. It also contains the vehicle module, and at the end of the file it will also contain the home module. And the reason the home module is here is because this module is also an entry module, because it is the starting point, the entry point of that tree of modules. So this is why it's at the bottom, because it is the point of start, if that makes sense, and I hope it makes sense. There is also another thing that is important to mention now, which is that for each item of the entry object there will be a corresponding chunk. So you can see here that we have the home name, and the home appears here as well. Let's also make that even more clear by uncommenting these lines and running the project again. And we see indeed that we have two other chunks, the home site 2 and home site 5, and of course the chunk hash. All right, so this is a chunk, a group of modules. And there is also another thing that I should mention now, and that is that this way of creating chunks, in my opinion, from my perspective, this is an explicit way of doing things. There are other ways to create chunks in a more, I would say, implicit way. For example, by using the import function. But this is a topic for another video. For now, it's important to understand that a chunk is just a group of modules. Now, let's go on to the placeholders. These names, these values between square brackets, can be thought of as placeholders. And those placeholders will have a certain value, so those placeholders will be replaced by something else. By default, the context in which those placeholders are replaced is the chunk context. So name here will refer not to the name of the file, it will refer to the name of the chunk. So that's why here we have home site 5, and here we have home site 5 as well. But now, if we were to have a look at our problem, we can observe that the name of the chunk isn't very helpful. What we would really need right now is the name of the file, or more specifically, we will need the entry path, because if you have the entry path, we can get the file name, the other directories, and so on. And in order to tweak this feature, which happens by default, namely that it uses the chunk context by default, we should see the place where all of these replacements take place, and that place is the templated path plugin. This is the function where all the replacements take place. And here we can see a part that could be of interest to our problem, because if we have this sort of file, which sort of looks familiar with what we're given, from here we can see all the available placeholders. But we'll come back to this in a minute. For now, let's see the default behavior, and this encapsulates all the entire default behavior. Here, name refers to the chunk name, chunk hash will refer to the chunk hash, and so forth. And yeah, this is basically the default behavior. This is why here we see name, the same name that we have here, and so on. Okay, what we'll do now is to go with the debugger. We'll go through those lines and see what is missing so that we can know what we will need in order to build our solution. So I will go with the debugger. I have already placed a debugger keyword here beforehand so that we save some time. Now I will run the build script, and you can see that it stops. Here we have the path, which refers to this value. We have data, which is very important, and as you can see, by default it only has a few properties, and it for sure doesn't have the file name, so this branch won't be executed. And let's go very quick over this functions body. And basically what Webpack does at this point is to create the replacements. We won't go into detail about this, but it's important to see that to see what happens, why here we have the name of the chunk, and we are about to find why. Here we have the name replacer, which will replace with the name of the chunk, and here we have home. I will place a breakpoint here for the other chunks to make it even more clear. Okay, and summary at the end of this file, we should see where all of these placeholders are replaced. This is the check to see whether we are dealing with a placeholder or not, and why not, let's go into it. Here we have the path, and we have the regex for the placeholders, and here we have a match. Here's the name, and the if expression is true. Okay. Now it's trying for other values because inside this, because inside the brackets you can also have a custom argument like that, but again this is not very important for now. But the important part is that here it will take the right replacer. Okay, so from all of these replacements it will take the name, because the kind is the name. Here the first argument will refer to the full match. This kind will refer to the first group, and the arg to the second group, which arg in this case doesn't exist. But here it's important to see that it will take the replacer. Let's also go very quick here and see what happens. Here the value is home, and it will simply give us the home value, and we place a breakpoint here as well to see what happens in case of the other chunks. Okay, so this is for another chunk, and here the value here the value is the hash. Okay, here the value is the ID, I think. Okay, so now we have the home site 2 chunk, and here we see home site 2, and instead of having the name, the simple name, oh, just a moment, I've put the breakpoint in the wrong place. This should be the one. Okay, so we have home site 2, and now instead of having the name placeholder, okay, we'll have this value. Alright, so now that we have the basics of chunks and placeholders, it's time to see the solution. Okay, so this is the solution I came up with. Here the first thing to notice is that file name no longer refers to a simple string value, but in this case it is a function. This file data is actually the data we have here. So here the path would refer to this in our example, and file data will simply refer to this data object, which as we've seen from the previous debugging session, we saw that it has the chunk, the hash, and other two properties, but it surely didn't have the file name, which as we will see in the solution, we will make use of this. Okay, so in this function, what we are doing in those lines is to make sure that the chunk is an entry chunk. So we want to run this logic. Only when we are dealing with the main chunk, and the main chunk is the one declared in the entry object. Okay. As I've said earlier, there might be other ways to create a chunk with the import statement, for example, and those chunks won't be considered as main chunks. Okay. Let me very quick uncomment this line. I'm not sure, to be honest, where this current path came from. Okay, anyway, I guess that because I haven't tested with any import function, this if statement wasn't executed. But anyway, so coming back to our solution, we are considering now only the main chunks, and a main chunk will have an entry module. As we've seen, this will be an entry module for the home chunk. This home.js will be the home module for the home site2 chunk, and the same logic will be applied to the home site chunk as well. So what we are doing further is to take the request of the module. So the request of the module will be this full path of the entry path, and this is what we are doing. We are taking the request. This is our delimiter, the overrides keyword. We are checking whether our entry path. So once again, this rec will refer to the entry path, to the full entry path, and we will see it once again in the debugger, so don't worry about that. And what we are doing is to check whether the overrides keyword appears in the entry path. If it does, then we want to null out the chunk, because, and this can be quickly seen here, if we have a file name, it has a name placeholder, but if we take a closer look to the chunk, it also have a name placeholder, and what it will happen is that the previous name placeholder will be replaced if we also have the chunk, and this is why we are assigning a null value to the chunk, so that this if statement won't be executed, because we don't want for our initial replacer to be replaced. We want to stick to this replacer, which has been created in the context of the file name, which is what we need for our problem. And here we are defining the file name, which is basically whatever comes after the overrides keyword. And once again, if that's the case, we will return the new file name, basically the shape of the new placeholders. This is what we will return, and this should make much more sense with the debugger. And by the way, right now you might be wondering, and you might be a bit confused, and I'm sorry about that. You might be wondering now, when will this function be invoked? Well, the answer is very simple. It will be invoked just before this function is invoked. We will see this right now. So the debugger should stop here at this file name if everything goes well, but it doesn't seem to go well. Okay, I will comment this out for now, because I wouldn't like to spend the time debugging this, so, because it isn't very important to our problem. So my bad. The debugger was deactivated. Sorry about that. Okay. So we stopped here. This is the file data, which is what we had here in our first debugging session. Let's see where it is invoked from. So this hook will lead to this templated path plugin. So this function, as I said, the file name function will be invoked just before this function is invoked. And the arguments are the data and the asset info, which again we will simply ignore for the moment. Okay, let's go back to the last breakpoint. So what we are doing is this. So this chunk will have an entry module. Sorry, not this one. Okay, and here we can see the user request, which is the full path of the entry path. And this should make more sense when you will see we will see this function being invoked for the other chunks. So that's why I'll put a breakpoint here. Okay, so now that we have the full request, we can see whether it has the overrides keyword or not. And it doesn't, so this will be returned. We'll keep the debugger here, why not? But we will deactivate the others. So this one will have the chunk, so we are okay with having the simple chunk name when the current chunk is home. Okay, but we will deactivate this and we will activate, or rather we'll just keep on with the execution. I will deactivate that breakpoint as well. Okay, so now we have the next chunk, and the current request is this one. So this rec will refer to the full path of this entry path. Okay, I hope this makes sense. Okay, and this path contains the overrides keyword. What we do is to null out the chunk, because once again we don't want that branch to be executed, this branch. Okay, and right now we are defining the file name, which is again exactly what comes after the overrides keyword. And why we are doing this, and now you might be wondering, why don't we take the overrides keyword as well? Because I'm following the rules of this context of this part of the plugin, which is that for this file, the path will simply be this one. So basically the path will be this entire file minus the base name, which is the last element of the path. This is what I need. This is what I need to make sure that the structure of the dist directory will be the one that I want to achieve. So notice that in this case, this is what it is returned. Let's go further, and we'll go step by step to see what the path is. So the path, this is what is returned, because this function, I'll go back again. So the first argument will be what this file name function returns. The first argument of this function will be whatever the file name function returns, which is in this case this part right here. So that's why the path is this one. The data is what we have changed in this part of the code. Okay, so the chunk no longer exists, but the file name property is present in this case, and it will go ahead and create all the replacements that are needed. Okay, so here we got the file. Here we're getting the base, the name, and so on. And here you can see how the path could be taken. Okay, and this is basically it. This will happen again. This will take place again for the home site 5. And a very, if not one of the most important thing to mention, which I think should have been mentioned at the beginning of this video, but it's fine now too. And that is the fact that the resulting outputted file path of this chunk will be this one. So will be this part here concatenated to the dist, to the path which points to the dist directory. So concretely in this case, okay, so here I also wrote about that important aspect which I forgot to mention earlier, and I'm sorry about that. So after the replacements are done, the resulted file, so in this case it could be site2 / home.js, will be appended to the output path, which in this case, because this is our Webpack configuration, okay, in this case it will refer to some dist directory. So this is again that part where I also wrote about this aspect, and these are further details which I've also explained. Yeah, alright, so this is basically my solution to this problem. Once again, let me show you the place where the join part will be done. This is done in the compiler.js. Okay, and in the emit files, and okay, this is the place. I'll put a breakpoint there, and I'll have to put another one to make sure that everything is clear. Just a moment. Okay, here. So I hope, okay, let's see. I will deactivate these breakpoints to make sure that we get to the interesting part faster. Okay, so here we are. This is the part of logic which is executed for the first chunk, so for this home chunk. So we will skip it, and here is the interesting part. So the target file is the result after the replacements are done. Okay, so here the path was site2 and the name was home.js, or home more concretely. And we can see that this condition will be matched because this regex will look for slashes. And what we'll do in this case is that, okay, when the resulting path contains slashes, it means that it's time to create a new directory and then cd into it. And this is what it does here. It will create a new directory, site2, which as you can probably notice, it follows the structure that we want to achieve. Okay, and here is the case for site 5. I will also put a breakpoint here at the okay, and here is the place where the final path is computed by using the output path and the target file. And this is done right here and not earlier because it has to create the directory first. Okay, and here is the structure that we want to achieve. And this is once again for the site 5. Okay, so this was basically it for this video. I hope this was clear, and I really hope that it sheds some light on how Webpack does some of its magical things. I will leave the link to the Stack Overflow question and to the Stack Blitz app in the description below. And yeah, I hope this was helpful to you. I plan to make more videos about different features of Webpack in the future. And if you have any suggestions or comments, please let me know in the comments below. And I will see you in the next one. Thank you. Bye.